that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the famous Tom Fennell.
In the flesh?
In the flesh. And Tom, by the way, is an electrical engineer with a great deal of experience in a specific kind of transmission.
Well, one time I was a cable engineer.
A cable engineer, okay. And he's got a story about his shirt.
Oh, I'll try and get myself
Stand up
here.
Yeah, do that.
First come on, you. Okay, get over here.
There you
get
go.
myself on deck.
Yep.
Bring myself up.
There you go.
And I'll try and
stand up, Tom.
Stand up.
I'll try to read it.
Yeah.
Ere many generations pass, our machinery will be driven by a power obtainable at any point in the universe. Nikola Tesla, Long Island, New York.
And that picture depicts Tesla's
this
installation in Wycliffe, Long Island.
Long Island. There you go.
Way out there, Montauk Point.
Yeah, and I had a friend who was telling me about this, and he said he's really glad that Nikola Tesla didn't build one of these things and power ships with it, which is what he was talking about doing, because if you happen to run into the space between the projector and the ship, who knows what would happen? Maybe you'd wind up being fried. So, I don't know that anybody really knows what Tesla was doing, but it's an interesting concept.
Well, as I said just before the show started, Tesla was a brilliant scientist, a brilliant engineer, and a lousy businessman.
There's plenty of those around.
He died pretty close to poverty.
Yeah?
Yeah. And just coincidentally, the day he died, his warehouse with all of his work burned down.
Burned down. Oh my gosh.
I guess it was, that the warehouse felt sad or something.
Well, we should get going on the show.
I think it's a good idea.
I have a blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com. You're invited to visit. And the thing that I do at the blog is I spend 3 or 4 hours every day just going through the day's news relating to energy and climate change. And I put together 10 or 15 items, put them up as a unit on the blog every day. Synopsis of each, 50 words for 55 words, and then a link to the original article. And Tom and I go through the 20 or so that are the most interesting every Thursday morning. So our news starts on Thursday a week earlier, and it ends on Wednesday. And this week we are starting on what, the 2nd? No, not the 2nd.
Starting on the 9th?
9th. We're starting on the 9th. So we can start dealing with that.
And we need a nice picture for the 9th.
A nice picture for the 9th. And there it is.
Go.
Let's put it up.
There we go.
There you go. This is a picture that depicts the amount of energy going on the grid that has come from coal, which is the blue at the top in each of these two graphs. The United States as a whole and Texas in particular. And what color is that? Is that orange? I'm slightly colorblind.
Yeah, you can call it orange.
Orange.
Yeah.
The orange one that's lower down is renewable. And we can see in the Texas graph that Texas is getting, or at least got in March, more of its electricity from renewables than it did from coal. Not just more, but a lot more. This was
There's a lot of wind in Texas. You don't even hear much about it.
You don't, except for occasionally we talk about it on this show. They have utilities in Texas that will give away power at night if you sign up to get wind power. The other thing on this graph, it shows the overall growth of renewables versus coal in the United States. And I want people to pay particular attention to the fact that renewables provided us with 19.2% of our electric power.
Across the board.
Across the board. And, I predicted, as you might remember, that renewables would surpass nuclear within 2 years.
Yeah.
And nuclear...
Which they have.
Well, not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite. In 2013, nuclear produced 19.3%. All right.
Okay.
But this year, it'll probably be closer to 21% because the total amount of electricity consumed in the United States has declined, and it's declined in a big way, about 5% in the last year. So.
This is because of the economy more than anything else.
Well, it's actually, I think a lot of it is because of renewables coming into the market that are not being counted by the EPA. I'm
like
sorry, by
rooftop
the DOE, like rooftop solar, and also by efficiency. There's a lot of stuff that's going in that produces efficiencies. And honestly, Tom, when you have rooftop solar that's going in for a company like General Motors or Apple or Google, if that's providing power for the building, I don't know that it's counted. But it certainly is not counted if it's below a megawatt or even below 5 megawatts. So there's a lot of power that's going in. It's not just ordinary folk, it's also big companies that are putting things on rooftops.
One of the other efficiencies that I think everybody's aware of but nobody thinks of is light bulbs.
Oh, sure. Wow.
I mean, by buying an expensive light bulb, which right now are subsidized by the state,
Yeah.
you can save 60% of the power for the same amount of light.
Yes.
That's not a bad investment.
It's not a bad investment.
And these LEDs last forever.
Yeah.
No such thing.
Yeah, as long as they're well made.
Yeah.
There's
some cheap ones out there.
Yeah, don't buy a cheap LED.
And it's not the LEDs that are failing.
It's
the electronics.
The electronics in there. I've had that happen where I bought an inexpensive LED, you screw it in, and then what happens is the electronics goes bad, and literally what happened with the one was it started throwing sparks inside the bulb.
Inside the bulb?
Inside the bulb. And then, of course, what happened was the circuit failed, so it wouldn't work anymore. Anyway, what's happening here is that renewables are growing like topsy, as we have said before, and my guess is at this point it won't be 2 years. It'll more likely be that within the next year, how about this, Tom? Within the next year, renewables will produce more electricity than nuclear.
You heard that here, folks.
I'm almost certain that this is going to happen by the end of 2017. So, and the reason is because we're having a bunch of nuclear power plants close. I mean, we've got one new one online, but there are, I think, 8 or 9 that are scheduled to. Well, it's 7 at least.
Because they're not making money.
They're not making money. And renewables are still going up, and nuclear is likely to go down. But also, if you look at this graph, you see that in the United States as a whole, coal might drop below nuclear. So you'd have renewables in aggregate ahead of all of the others. And by the way, I should also mention a couple of things. One of which is it's on the graph that's been on the screen a couple of times. The source of this information is the Energy Information Administration, whose information I think is appallingly bad when they're looking forward, but it's not too bad when they're looking backward. And the other thing is that this. What was the other thing? I don't remember. Okay, let's just go ahead.
Well, this is the highest percentage since hydropower ruled the country's power grid decades ago.
Right, and that is the other point. This number that we're seeing, 19.2, includes hydropower.
Okay.
Okay, that was the other point.
Which is considered renewable.
It is renewable,
I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, okay, let's keep going.
The next one's interesting.
Oh, wait a minute. We have to say where that came from and what it was. Clean Technica gave us that information. What's the title, Tom?
Renewables closing in on coal in the U.S.
Yep. Analysis of the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis highlights the recent numbers which show that the amount of electricity generated by hydro, wind, biomass, geothermal sources together reached 19.2% of all power generated in the United States during March. But the ultimate source of this information was, in fact, the Energy Information Administration, and it was in its monthly
That's what it says
update.
on the graph.
Yep, monthly update for March. Okay, next, CNN.
Okay, the next one's an interesting one.
Yes?
Norway becomes the first country to ban deforestation. You
How about
can't
that?
clear cut Norway anymore.
Yeah, Norway has become the first country to stop clear-cutting trees, a huge step toward curbing global deforestation. In their pledge this week, Norwegian lawmakers also committed to find a way to source essential products like palm oil, soy, beef, and timber sustainably. And I want to point out, palm oil is not grown in Norway, and neither is soy to any great extent. They can grow beef, but they're not known for that. And they have timber, but they're looking at this from a global point of view. Mm-hmm. So that's worth noting.
There's a couple of takeaways here that's interesting. Norway has shown its commitment to a cleaner environment in other ways. In 2008, the country gave Brazil $1 billion to help fight deforestation of the Amazon rainforest.
Right.
Slashing deforestation by 75%.
Yeah.
In 7 years.
Yeah.
And there's another interesting takeaway. It is in the process of restricting the sales of gas-powered cars by 2025.
Yes, and it's not the only country to be doing that.
And I just heard on the way coming in here, Volkswagen is going on a big project to introduce 30 new electric cars in the near future.
Wow.
30 new electric models.
Wow.
They're going after, I think they're trying to cover their...
They're trying to make up for their sins.
But they're doing something anyhow.
Yep. Okay. Our next item is, we're already up to Friday, June 10th, and our next item comes from Clean Technica.
Australian wind energy hits a record last month, and it keeps wholesale electricity prices down.
Australian wind energy saw its biggest ever month. By the way, we have a picture for that too.
Let me get it.
In May, producing nearly a quarter more electricity than the previous month, any previous month, and overtaking hydro to provide 8.5% of the country's grid electricity. And new analysis shows wind generation keeps a lid on wholesale prices. And this is what's been mentioned here is just wind and hydro, which between them are doing about 17%. That does not include solar power, which is getting really big in Australia.
In some parts of Australia, it is already very big.
It is indeed, yeah. Nice picture.
Interesting takeaway here. The record output came coincidentally in the same month that the last coal-fired power plant in South Australia was closed.
Yes.
Now, by the way, South Australia is the name of a state.
Yes.
Not necessarily a region.
Yes. Yeah, South Australia is big.
It's a big state.
It's a big state. It's not huge by Australian standards, but huge by Australian standards would... I think Texas would be pretty small in Australia.
Yeah.
As a state.
Yeah. What do they got? 7 states or 8 states?
Something like that, yeah.
And they're all big. Well, almost all of them
Almost all of them are big. I don't know how big Victoria would be compared to Texas, but Victoria is small.
That's the smallest state.
For Australia, but it's... Okay, our next one is from Grist.
Grist.
Yep.
Yeah, they come up with some good stuff every once in a while.
Yep.
Solar panels don't raise utility rates and might even lower them.
A new report from the Brookings Institution points to numerous examples of solar actually lowering rates for utility customers, whether they have solar panels or not. Net metering solar power reduced needs for more expensive power resources and helped stabilize the grid. You know, we've talked about transmission lines in this part of the discussion. What happens when solar is put on somebody's roof is it means that the utility doesn't need to update the transmission lines as much.
Well, if you look at the great big picture, the existing transmission lines are going to be kind of faded out. And what's going to replace them are going to be some super highway transmission lines.
It seems like a big possibility. We're seeing purchases, for example, where a Florida utility is buying power from a power producer in Oklahoma or Nebraska.
There's some long distance deals being made.
And you know, the fact is, utility lines at this point are so efficient that if you put in the state-of-the-art lines, you could power Vermont from anywhere on Earth.
Yeah, That's kind of what's happening now. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't generate a heck of a lot of our own electricity.
Well, it's growing, though, because of local
Yeah.
renewable power. Okay. Our next one is from VPR, Vermont Public Radio.
I've heard of them.
Yeah.
After 11 hours, lawmakers reach a resolution on renewable energy siting. Now, we'll be talking about this again in this show.
Yeah.
This is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about what you're going to talk
After 11 hours in the Vermont State House, there's been a policy resolution, renewable power, a renewable energy bill vetoed by Governor Peter Shumlin earlier this week has been replaced by lawmakers with a substantially similar stand-in that addresses the governor's concerns. Now, the governor was worried that the previous law would put too much power into local communities, which could then have public opinion poisoned, really, against renewable resources.
Well, I looked at it when it was happening, and I was saying this is a stealth attempt by loud voices to stifle wind power.
And utility scale solar also.
But I was thinking in terms of wind power.
And we should talk about that. I think there are people who think of me as an advocate for wind power, and I'm not really. I also think that people who live in communities should have some kind of say about
That's
what
fair.
goes on. But the fact is that their opinions are being poisoned. There's
a small group of very vocal
and in some cases,
anti-wind, anti-large-scale solar.
and in some cases, these people are paid to do that.
No.
No. Well, at least that's my understanding. I could conceivably be wrong, and I'm not in this case, by the way, categorizing Annette Smith or Vermonters for a Clean Environment in that, because I don't think they're paid. But there are other people who I really
sure
believe
there
are.
Some of the lawmakers, I think,
Yeah.
in one way or another, are paid.
The problem is, even if with the EPA, with the DOE saying, yeah, we could get 50% of our current demand covered by rooftop solar, we cannot get our demand covered by rooftop solar, even if it's combined with urban solar, which would be parking lots and things like that being covered. And I think, honestly, these same people who are objecting to wind power, if you tried to get all of our power from solar, would object to the things that would be done in order to enable that, which would include
Like transmission lines.
passing a law saying you've got to have solar in your roof. I don't think these people want to be told what to do with their roofs.
Well, I don't think so either.
And getting to 100% of our, getting to 50% or more of our power being generated would require a law that would say that. And the other thing is, as we go forward in the 21st century, and this is going to happen very soon, we're going to be getting more and more of our heat from electricity. And we're going to be getting more and more of our transportation from electricity. And I think that almost all of the oil infrastructure, gasoline infrastructure, and so forth is going to be falling away within 18 years.
Oh, I think you're right.
And
I think you're right on the money there.
We've got to keep our options open. And the other thing is, the things that are being told to people are not true in many cases. And I think anybody who has got somebody coming to them and with the idea of frightening them, a person who's worried about this should say, why is this person trying to make me afraid?
Because being afraid is very good to influence behavior.
Yeah. What it does is it means that you don't think. And they don't want you to think. Because if you think, you won't do what they tell you to do.
You can hear some of the rhetoric here. I mean, a single wind turbine is now being called industrial scale.
Yes. Unless, of course, it's like
Unless it's a little
bitty
pinwheel
thing.
in your garden.
And there are some, by the way, pinwheel in the garden type wind turbines. And
Yeah.
they're not pinwheels, but Pica Energy, which is in Maine, makes wind turbines that are so quiet, they're like 38 decibels at 200
That's less
feet.
than what we're talking right now.
Yes, and what it means is that when this thing is churning away power at a furious pace, the sound of the turbine is going to be drowned out by the sound of the rustling leaves. And this is for a little turbine that you could put at your home, and that's PIKA in case anybody wants to know. And they have some other products that combine wind with solar. You can have wind and solar going into the same inverter.
Okay, that's
Okay.
a plus.
And so they're providing some very interesting services. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, I think
We're
we
up to
should.
Saturday, the 11th of June, and we have a picture of
This
George Schultz.
This is an interesting.
This is from Clean Technica also.
Let's get Georgie boy up.
Yes, let's get George Schultz up there. And I forget the name of the general.
So do I.
General.
He's an
Sorry,
admiral.
he's an admiral.
Yeah,
I was going to say that's not an army uniform. Why did I think he was a general?
and he's look at his arm there. He's a pretty high up admiral.
Yeah, he's this guy is
He's got
significant.
3 or 4 stars.
Yeah.
I can't see enough of his arm there, but the title here is the U.S. carbon tax is close to inevitable,
Yeah.
and that itself is a statement. But who's making the statement is even more significant.
Absolutely. Conservative labor proclaims this. The moral disgrace of ignoring global warming is too strong. Some Republican congresspeople have been taking time to learn about global warming. They don't want their party's legacy to be denial supporting corruption.
Somebody's
And-
waking up.
Yeah, and George Schultz, by the way, has been talking about this for quite a long time, but he's not the only one. And there are people in the Republican Party who are getting very upset about it, which is one of the reasons that I predicted a year ago that the Republican Party would split.
Well, there
Possibly.
seems to be several things happening within the Republican Party right now
There sure
that may
are.
make that more likely.
Yeah. And I think, Donald Trump going on, he just yesterday he was saying, if you people aren't going to cooperate with me, I'm going to go my own way. And by golly, I hope that's exactly what he does.
I'm gonna take my football and go home.
That's right. I hope that's exactly what he does, because the alternative for the Republican Party would be to follow him, and he's a, you know what a fool is, Tom? A fool is not a person who's stupid.
Uh-huh.
A fool is a person who uses his intelligence badly.
Okay.
Donald Trump is not stupid,
Okay.
but he's a fool. And you can tell him I said so.
My fear of him is that he's just so unpredictable.
That's exactly right. And if he were not a fool politically, he would realize the importance of a consistent stand. But he can't keep a consistent stand from one end of a sentence to another.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the way, everybody, I want everybody to know this. I have actually, I think, mentioned on this show that I was a life member of the National Rifle
Yeah,
Association. Okay, the operative word in that sentence is was. I am not a member of the National Rifle Association. I have resigned that group, and the reason is because they endorsed Donald Trump. I sent them a nice little letter that said, if you're going to endorse a person who cannot be consistent, then you've got to understand that the fact that he's backing you today doesn't mean he's going to back you tomorrow. And
Interesting perspective.
it's an interesting thing. And you know what he did yesterday in response to the Orlando shooting?
I don't think I remember.
He called for more gun controls.
Huh?
He did, yes. I don't
Well,
think.
look, if everybody was backing, that would have never happened.
Well, that I think is true, and it's one of the things that comes up often in terms of gun controls is that if you look at the states in New England, the safest state in terms of crime is Vermont, which has the most liberal laws on guns. And by liberal, I don't mean that they are controlling guns. It is that they are.
Not liberal politically, liberal generically.
Yeah, they have the laws that make it easiest for a person in New England to own and carry firearms.
There's
And
virtually no gun control laws in Vermont at all.
there are local ordinances.
Local ones.
Yeah.
I was thinking statewide, yeah.
No, there's no. Vermont is one of 2 states that has no carry license, and the other being Alaska, which they did consciously copying Vermont. But anyway, I don't want to get involved in that. I am no
We're
longer.
running far afield here.
I am no longer a member of the NRA. Okay, our next item has a picture associated
let's
with
get a
it. This is
picture
a
up.
weird picture.
Well, this is a very interesting story, though.
Yeah, it is. This comes from C-News Renewables.
The Tennet, T-E-N-N-E, big T. That's the name of a company.
Yeah.
Tennet Holding BV, whatever BV means, proposes a wind connector in the North Sea. Now, looking at this is a good idea
Yeah.
because they've been building substations at sea
Yeah.
to connect all the turbines to the mainland.
Right.
And what they've decided to do here is let's collect all of this stuff and build a little island.
I think this is more than a little island.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a big island. Well,
I mean, it's got a.
it's bigger. It's smaller than Rhode Island, but
Yes, that's right. Tennet Holding BV presented a plan for building an island in the North Sea to connect over 30 gigawatts of offshore wind farms and deliver power to countries in the region. The transmission system operator says the most suitable location for that island will be Dogger Bank. And
well, Dogger Bank is almost in the exact geometric center of the North Sea.
it also is fairly shallow.
It is.
And-
There are times when it's above the
Yeah.
surface of the sea.
So they could put this island in. They might even claim it as their own sovereign nation. I don't know. But if you look at
That's
that.
coming.
Yeah, if you look
If
at
they
that.
don't do it, Greenpeace will.
Yeah, right. If you look at that picture, you'll see that there's a
It's a small town.
there's a landing strip
yeah.
right in the middle of it, and
Mooring.
there's mooring, and that mooring looks to me like it's for ships. It's not for
Not for powerboats.
not for motorboats that
Yeah.
people can come in on. And there's a town there. There are big buildings that you can barely see because they're so small in the picture. And those little green dots, those are trees, I'm pretty sure.
Something like that.
Something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah, there's going to be a permanent, if they build it, it's going to be a permanent base. There's going to be people living there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And the whole concept, I think, makes a lot of sense. Reducing offshore wind connection costs is obvious.
Right,
It eliminates the need to build converter stations and platforms in the sea.
right.
And the island offers a permanent place for workers and a joint base for storage.
And a place where you can walk around. If you look at
Looks
those
like some
pictures,
nice beaches on
yeah.
it, too.
If you look at those places that they have for connecting the wind turbines to the grid that
The
they're
converter
using now,
stations.
it looks to me like they're the size of a small town, but they're almost like oil drilling rigs. And I would
Very much
imagine
so.
that's
You could
not exactly a place that a person could enjoy living on for very long.
And they have to live there for a while.
And they have to live there for a while.
And this is a good idea. It may very well come about just because it's a good idea.
Yeah, more than once, as a matter of fact. Our next item is from Penn Energy.
Costa Rica puts the finishing touches on a hydroelectric power dam.
Costa Rica is finishing up the largest hydroelectric power project in Central America as the last generators come online. The Reventazon Dam is expected to produce 305.5 megawatts, enough for 525,000 homes. This is a lot of the houses in Costa Rica.
This was about the size of Yankee when it first started. A little bit smaller.
60% perhaps.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but that's a lot. And, you know, they don't use as much power in Central America as we do. So the number of people that it'll support is about the population of Vermont.
Yeah.
So,
And Costa Rica gets 98% of its power from renewables
yeah.
right now.
Okay, our next
Hydro
one.
plants, just a
Yeah.
quick takeaway. Hydro plants now supply 75% of the country's power. Geothermal produces 13%. and wind power produces 10%.
So they're going to have excess power.
I think they very
And
well might.
they're going to do something with that excess power. They're probably going to be powering industry or something down there.
If they
Agriculture.
got the power They're going to bring
It's,
in industry.
it's kind of like
Build it and they will come.
computer memory. You know, in the old days in computers, they used to have a rule, which was the application will expand to consume all memory. And, and this is
That's
under
interesting
under
concept,
DOS.
yeah.
You know, I was a computer engineer, so that was something that I was very familiar with. It doesn't happen anymore because you've got many applications going. And what we have now is a situation where the operating system expands to consume all disk space. And
Yeah.
of course, that means the operating systems are expanding at breakneck speed because the disk spaces are expanding. But
Well, we got
anyway,
an interesting one coming up.
okay,
on-
this is from Environment and Energy Environment and Energy Publishing. Sorry, the last one was from
Put
Penn
the
Energy.
picture up.
Yeah.
On Kodiak Island, flywheels are in and diesel is 99.8% out.
Kodiak Electric Association has 2 flywheels. These are like the little gyroscope things that
They
we played
are
with
big
as,
flywheels.
as kids, each of which can store up to 1 megawatt. Well, I'm sorry, somebody gave us some bad information there. It should be stored up to 1 megawatt hour or 2
Yeah.
megawatt hours, but what they mean is it can provide up to 1 megawatt, and
If
the
you
two
look
of
at the
them.
picture there, there's 2 white buildings on the right.
Yep.
I think that is
Where they are?
Where they are.
Well,
yeah.
they said and that's enough power to lift a heavy cargo container from the dock and move it to a ship. The renewables are supplying power at a much reduced cost, and diesel is 99.8% out. This is happening a lot. And by the way, look at the picture and see the wind turbines up on the.
Well, this is all part of the deal. I mean,
It
this was a brilliant situation.
Yep.
Matson Shipping transports a lot of stuff from the Orient to various parts of the U.S., and they use this port because of its location
Right.
as a transshipment port.
Yes.
So they had cranes there before that were diesel powered, but they weren't big enough. Okay,
So
they
you
put
get
in
rid of them and
huge
replace them.
electric. they wanted to build this huge electric crane, which is huge.
Yeah.
And then the local power company says, we can't support it. So they turned around and said, well, we're going to help you support it. And they put up the turbines, and they put up these flywheels, which are basically the equivalent of giant batteries.
Yes.
And the interesting part of it is when the crane lifts up a container, it's using power. And when it drops it on the next ship, it's regenerating power.
Cool.
So the only thing that the utility has to supply is to trickle charge these things
Yes.
in between. The whole thing's brilliant, really.
I mentioned frauds earlier, and I have seen a fraud that was put together with a flywheel where a person was saying, "Look at this, I can plug in this thing and the light bulb will come on, and then when I pull the plug out, my secret apparatus inside this box that you can buy for a pittance, we'll just keep it going, and it'll
It'll go
plug it."
forever.
Yeah, and I saw him plug the thing in. This was a video I saw. He plugged the thing in, and you hear, and what's happening is a flywheel is just going faster and faster and faster.
Oh, okay.
And the electric thing comes on, and he unplugs it, and you can actually hear a very gradual change in the pitch of the box that he's got, because the flywheel's slowing down. This is not permanent power. Sorry, people will go after you if you're willing to express any kind of monetary commitment to their inventions. You have to be really careful of fraud, con artists.
Oh, yeah.
They're just
Speaking of flywheels, there is it's a pilot plant, but at the intersection of New York, Massachusetts, and Vermont,
Yes.
town I think is called Millerton,
Okay.
there is a flywheel.
Yes.
I mean, it was a flywheel energy
Right.
plant, if you will.
Yes.
And I envisioned it was flat like a record player, and it's not. It's a cylinder,
Yeah.
and it's got magnetic bearings, so there's almost no friction.
Yeah.
And this thing just sits there and it spins, and then when there's surplus power, it spins faster. When there's less power,
There you go.
it's balancing the
The grid.
As far as I know, it's
This,
still in
this
operation.
grid balancing thing is extremely important, and it goes back as far as the grid does. And,
Absolutely.
And this is storage. The renewable energy is not the first kind of technology to come on. Solar and wind are not the first technologies to come on that need storage. And as a matter of fact, we've mentioned this many times, just 20 miles down the river from here, there is the Northfield Mountain Station,
Which is very large.
it's a park.
storage
You
plant.
go in there, you're completely unaware of the fact that there's any industrial thing going on. But it had the capacity to output twice as much electricity as the Vermont Yankee power plant, for which it was support. Because
Yeah.
baseload power is a terrible match for grid demand.
Well,
So-
one of the things nobody's really aware of, I mean, if you want to look into it, you could.
Yeah.
But all around, say, Boston,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of these little jet engines.
Yes.
You know, they're there to provide peaking power.
Yes.
And most of the
And
time,
they're expensive
not
to
even
run.
on.
Yes.
But if they are on, they charge a lot of money.
That's right. And you know, people who are disparaging of solar or wind will say, "Look at solar power. You're only getting 15% of a capacity factor." But you know, look at coal, natural gas, and nuclear. Well, those plants that you're talking about, which run on natural gas, a lot of them, have got capacity factors that are very often well below 10%. They're off almost all the time.
Uh-huh.
So, you know, there's a lot of misinformation going around too. Okay, our next item is from Tulsa World. And why Tulsa World would be my source for this? I don't know.
I don't know either.
But-
we got a picture coming up.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
That's a picture, believe it or not, of Paris.
Yeah, that water you see on the edge of the bridge is the same.
Yeah. So
Experts find climate change's fingerprints in French floods.
there you go. An international team of scientists provided calculations on recent floods in France. They found that global warming increased the chances of the Loire River Basin flooding by 90% and of the Seine River Basin by 80%. That's compared to a world with no man-made climate change.
Scientists say climate change doubled the chance of flooding in France's home.
Yeah. So, and it's only going to get worse until it gets better, and it's going to get worse for at least another 20 years if we could stop emitting carbon completely.
Well, they didn't go into the cause of this, but what they did say, this is a fact. Parts of France got 3 months of rain in just 1 month. Much of it in just 3 days.
Yeah.
And the Seine, which runs through Paris, as we know, rose to 20 feet above its normal height.
Yes.
Can you imagine the Connecticut River here
20
rising
feet.
20 feet?
Well,
Holy cow.
that was like Irene. It wasn't. Irene was not that bad actually in terms of the height of the flooding. But
No, it was just
the
went through
Whetstone,
the city streets.
yeah,
is
the
what it
Whetstone
did.
Brook I think could have been 20 feet above its.
It could have been, yeah.
yeah.
The Whetstone
But,
could have
you
been.
know-
At least in certain parts, I'm sure it was.
Right. Okay. Our next one. This is Monday, June 13th. Comes from Bloomberg, and we have a
We're
picture on
missing-
that.
Either I'm missing one or you're missing one. We got something.
I'm
from
sorry,
CNN.
it's CNN. Our next one comes from CNN, and it's not Monday, it's Sunday. Okay, you're right, Tom.
Okay, Miss Liberty welcomes Solar Impulse 2 plane.
Yeah.
If you look at that picture, you can figure out what it is.
Yeah.
I would first look at it, what the heck is that? But that's a Solar Impulse. It's got lights on its engines and its crew cab,
Yep,
flying over the Statue of Liberty. It's actually quite a nice picture.
yeah. Solar Impulse 2, the largest solar-powered aircraft in the world, landed early Saturday in New York City. It is its 14th hop and final U.S. destination in its year-old trek around the world, which got stuck in Hawaii for months and months. It flew past the Statue of Liberty before landing at JFK International Airport. And by the way, its next stop, as far as I can see, is planned to be either in Spain or Morocco.
Okay. It plans to return, ending its trip in Abu Dhabi in late summer.
Yeah, that's going to be this summer.
Yeah, it's coming.
And they
It's
said they found out what went wrong in Hawaii. They had fried their batteries, but they said that they had realized this was human error that had caused the problem. Okay.
There was a quick takeaway from this.
Oh, okay.
Kind of humorous. Look, up in the sky. It's a giant dragonfly. It's a winged dinosaur. It's solar impulse 2.
Yeah, right.
Let's move along.
Okay, Bloomberg. Now we're back to Bloomberg.
We're back to Bloomberg here.
And we have an image for that too. There it is.
There
That's
we
a
go.
cool image. It took me a while to figure out what this was all about, but you
The world nears peak fossil fuels for
For-
electricity.
the way we get electricity is about to change dramatically as the era of ever-expanding demand for fossil fuels comes to an end in less than a decade. Less than a decade? Yeah. That's according to new forecast by Bloomberg New Energy Finance. That graph is not a graph of the cost of panels on the y-axis versus the date on the x-axis. Yeah, the dates do increase as you go left to right, but the thing that's increasing on the x-axis, and the reason why at the bottom of the screen it's 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000.
That's logarithmic.
It's logarithmic. That is the amount that is shipped. So both of these scales are logarithmic, and what they're showing
they are.
is as the amount of solar power doubles, the cost of the panels falls 26%. And I want to point out the module costs have fallen 99% since 1976 and 80% since 2008, and they're projected to keep falling. The people who are
We can't go forever.
they can't go forever, but they are projected to keep falling, and
This was a very interesting article.
Yeah.
If I would advise our viewers, if they want to pursue this, look it up, click on it, and read it. It's a long article. It goes into depth,
yeah.
and it's very interesting with a lot of graphs.
Yep.
A lot of graphs. Nice article.
By the way, I don't know if you noticed this, but this week at the beginning of the blog where we have our stuff for the show, there was a thing for visitors. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Well, the reason I did that is because I find people are starting to follow this blog,
Okay.
and the blog postings come on. Today's for next week is already up.
Yeah.
But it's only one day, and it gets updated. The people who are following
So things might change during the course of the
things
week.
will change. People who are following this will see the first one, but they won't see subsequent updates.
Okay.
So if you want to watch this, if you want to go to the blog that is not the geoharvey.wordpress.com blog, but you want to go to the specific blog that is Tom and I use to support this show so that we know what we're going to be talking about at the show, you can do that. It's called energyweeknews.wordpress.com. I think that's what it is.
I should know, but
All right.
I look it up, but I don't remember it.
I think it's energyweeknews.wordpress.com. You can go there and watch, but you're just going to have to be aware of the fact that it gets updated, and you will not be notified, even if you're following, of the subsequent updates. You'll only be notified when the new one goes up, which usually happens on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, whenever I feel that I'm not lazy enough not to do it. Okay, our next item is from the Union Leader.
And we're moving back to local.
Yes,
Towns
indeed.
and cities concerned for New Hampshire's energy future. This is a good article, too.
Yeah. While state officials are struggling to define New Hampshire's energy future through a variety of legislative and regulatory proceedings, the cities and towns in the state are not standing by waiting for the next signal from Concord. Many of them are moving forward aggressively on their own.
Yeah, they're doing their own thing.
They're doing their own thing.
Investing themselves, and
Yeah.
I got to list them here, but it could take too much space.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff still coming, so maybe we should just move on. We're going to have to hit these things pretty quickly. Our next item is from Tuesday, June 14th, and this is from BBC.
El Nino likely to boost CO2 in 2016.
Right. A big spike in atmospheric CO2 levels means the greenhouse gas is about to pass a historic threshold. This year will very likely mark the first in the time the concentration of CO2 as measured atop Hawaii's famous Mauna Loa volcano has been above 400 parts per million for the entire year.
That's kind of scary.
It is kind of scary. That's a picture, by the way, of the observatory up there at sundown.
Put it up
So,
again.
yeah, isn't that pretty?
It is.
Yeah,
It's pretty
I have a feeling that I'd be a little out of breath up there.
I know you would be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And our next item is from the Washington Post. And this is important, by the way.
National Roundup. High Court leaves intact standards for mercury.
Yep. The Supreme Court on Monday left intact a key Obama administration environmental regulation, refusing to hear an appeal from 20 states seeking to block rules that limit emissions of mercury and other toxic pollutants from the nation's power plants.
And we've talked about that appeal.
We have. And one of the things that is interesting to me is this looks to me like it's a dress rehearsal for a suit of 27 states against the EPA on the Clean Power Plan.
Okay.
I think what's going to happen is the Supreme Court is going to vote on that exactly the same way that it did on this, and for exactly the same reasons. And by the way, anybody who thinks that that suit is justifiable on the basis of the Constitution should recognize that the EPA produced that plan at the insistence of the courts, and that was something that went to the Supreme Court, went to the district court. I think the Supreme Court refused to hear that also. And so in effect, the Supreme Court had told the EPA, you've got to come up with a way of regulating CO2, and the EPA came up with it, and of course they got sued by a large number of people, a large number of attorneys general, I should say. That is the Washington Post that came up with that article, and our next one is in News Source.
San Diego Gas and Electric hits 35% clean energy.
Yeah,
And this is interesting because this is a conventional electricity supplier. This is one
These
of the
are
big
the
guys.
people who had the San Onofre nuclear plant that lost both reactors simultaneously because of an engineering failure. The last year, 35% of all electricity provided by the San Diego Gas and Electric came from renewable resources, a record for the company and for California investor-owned utilities. That puts the company well ahead of the schedule for California to eliminate Californian climate change requirements of 33% by 2020. They hit 35% in 2015.
Well, what makes this particularly significant is how electricity is generated is crucial, because more carbon dioxide is put into the air as a result of making electricity than from any other source in the United States.
That's changing, though.
Yeah.
It's because there's also home heating, and there's also transportation, and there's also industry. And the three big ones are electricity, home heating, and transportation, and we've got to deal with home heating and transportation. Fortunately, it's cheaper to do both of those from electricity than it is from fossil
like
fuels.
heat source power,
Air source heat pump. They're expensive units, but they don't cost more than oil burners, and they're competitive with oil, even at a low price of oil. So we're going to be moving in that
So
direction.
the times are changing.
Yeah, they are. Our next item is from the Barry Montpelier, I want to say Montpelier, which is what a lot of people do, Times Argus.
Back to Vermont.
Yeah.
Energy citing bill signed into law. Well, we just touched base on this
Earlier.
We'll touch base again.
Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin signed S-260, which was the replacement bill. He said the bill addresses criticism of weak local control over wind and solar energy projects in an earlier bill he had vetoed. while at the same time supporting the growth of green energy infrastructure. It was interesting to see how that came about.
This isn't final. We're going to be hearing more about this in,
Oh, yeah.
in the future.
People want to have control over their environment that they
Well,
live in.
that's part of it. It's a big
Yeah.
part of it. Probably the biggest part of it.
And there are a lot of people who want to see that renewable energy is not used because, well, just look
For
at the
various reasons.
yeah, the fossil fuels industry is going to lose $100 trillion in stranded assets if we deal with climate change. If we're going to deal with climate change, because otherwise we lose it. And about $100 trillion, that's a lot of money.
Transit assets.
That's 1.3 times the gross world product.
Okay.
These companies, which by the way, in 2014, the 21, 22 biggest ones together, their revenues were approximately double the U.S. federal budget. And they have got a lot of power.
This is big business.
This is big business. You know, people talk about big wind. How many people out there know the name of the largest wind turbine manufacturer in the world? Do you, Tom?
Is it Vestas?
No, it used to be.
Okay.
Last year it was, but this year it's
No, I guess I don't.
This year it's Goldwind.
Goldwyn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chinese.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not either, but you know, people don't know the names of these companies they're complaining about. They know Iberdrola because Iberdrola wants to install a wind farm, but you know, that just happens to be, if it had been Larry Moe and Curly, they would know Larry Moe and Curly, you know. But they don't know, and they don't know that, you know, the studies are, Benjamin Sovacool, who is a adjunct professor at the Vermont Law School, did a study, and his study showed that for every bird killed producing an amount of power with wind turbines, there would be somewhere between 20 and 40 killed by fossil fuels. The Royal Society for Protection of the Birds, what do they do when they wanted to switch to renewable power for their headquarters in the UK? They put in a wind turbine. They did. They were very careful about how that wind turbine was sited. And by the way,
and they shut it off when there's birds migrating.
And also, if the wind is going at the speed at which bats will go to the level of the blades of the wind turbines,
Okay.
when they're hunting around dawn and dusk, the wind turbine shuts off.
Okay.
So that it won't kill bats. They're very careful about this.
Responsible, I think, is the word, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we are up to
Wednesday.
June 15th. And we have a picture on this one too, I
Let's get
see.
the picture
Oh,
up.
look at that. Wow.
Reducing power plant CO2 emissions has positive economic benefits. Well, we've talked about this several
Indeed,
times.
we have. Clean Technica is the source of this. A new study from Harvard University shows why criticisms of the high costs to lower carbon emissions are nothing more than 100% baloney. It not only gives a lie to such absurd notions, it demonstrates in stark terms just how much economic value lowering emissions can create. And the chart here is a chart of the costs of utility scale solar power. And it's showing the cost of solar broken down so that you have the module itself, which has been about, in the past, about half the cost. The inverter, the racking, other hardware installation, other costs, and all of them are declining pretty much as time moves on. And this comes from the International Renewable Energy Agency. So there are a lot of costs there are a lot of costs in our society of carbon emissions. And
Well, they've been externalizing these costs, and they're buried in our society.
yeah, people
And
don't
people are
notice
paying
it.
more for insurance, and people are getting sick, and people are missing work, and you add all these things up, and there's a lot of negatives.
Right, and we've heard about mansions along the shore in Florida that can't be sold because they can't be they can't get mortgages because they can't be insured.
Yeah.
Because they're too close to the sea.
Too close to the sea. And
now, what was the Brattleboro Housing Authority?
Yeah.
They had a property that is essentially having to be abandoned because it's too close.
Well, it's essentially true. It's Melrose.
All right. Now,
And right now, the Housing Authority is building a new building up by the high school,
right,
which is going to take care of most of the people in Melrose,
right.
but not all of them.
Now-
And phase 2 hasn't even been figured out yet. We
Yeah.
got to get the people out of Melrose into the new building, which would be hopefully the fall of this
Now,
year.
is Melrose in a 100-year zone or a 500-year zone? Do you know? It's not in an area that's closer to the whetstone than the 100-year flood zone. Is
Well,
it?
it's right next to the whetstone.
Oh, is it?
And
Okay.
As a matter of fact, what happened during the last flood was the whetstone decided to change course. And instead of going through its normal channel, it went right through the road that goes through Melrose.
Ah, okay.
But the bottom line about Melrose is, and this is already factual, no matter who owns it in due course, they will not be able to house people there if there's any federal money involved at all.
Right. Which means basically it's going to be very hard to get mortgage.
It's unlikely to get a buyer.
Yeah. So
People are
it's
gonna-
being
gonna
abandoned.
Look at that, it's
Yeah.
a lovely little development. And
Right.
It's really a neat little
How
place.
old is it?
Not 50, about 50 years old.
So here you've got this little development which is next to a brook, very picturesque, very beautiful spot,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden people can't live there because of a storm? No, it's because of climate change that caused
Basically,
the storm.
yes. Yeah.
And this is something
Because
that is
the likelihood of such and such a storm happening has greatly increased.
greatly increased.
It's not the 1,000-year flood anymore. It's like the 20-year flood.
Yeah, and in places in the United States, a lot of real estate value has gone to zero because of essentially you could buy those mansions along the shore in Florida,
And you can live in them.
and you could live in them.
But if anything happens, you're not going to collect insurance.
That's right. You might even be able to collect them.
Fire.
You might be able to get insurance for specific things that don't include storm or flooding.
Yeah.
But you'd be taking a risk, and that's just part of the whole thing, I guess.
There's a good takeaway here.
Yeah.
The truth is that continuing to use the earth as a toilet for mankind's activities is more expensive than cleaning up our act.
Yes, absolutely. There's no question about it. We have one final thing here, which comes from Bloomberg.
Looks like we got two.
Two. Oh, no. Yes. My mouse isn't working, so I didn't scroll. Okay,
Well, we'll hit the first one here from Bloomberg.
let's do
The
that.
cost of clean energy seen nosediving into the next decade.
Yeah. The average cost of electricity from renewable sources is set to decline more, according to a report from the International Renewable Energy Agency. The cost of PVs could fall by as much as 59% by 2025. That's not that far away. Offshore wind may see reductions of 35%, followed by onshore wind of 26%. And it is hard for me to imagine how natural gas is going to be able to compete with solar PVs if the cost declines by 59%. Okay, our last item is from
Look to the
Green
last one,
Biz, and it has a picture.
Yeah, this is.
And that's a
this is
Vermont
neat one.
picture.
There's a
It
good,
is.
good backstory here.
Yep.
Boardman Hill, bringing inexpensive clean energy to members.
The
That's in
Boardman,
Rutland.
yep, the Boardman Hill Solar Farm is a great example of neighbors coming together to get affordable power through community-scale solar. The 150 kilowatt project in West Rutland, Vermont, arose when two people invited the town to a meeting to talk about a community project.
And what happened at that meeting?
Well,
56 people showed up and signed up to be joint owners.
yeah, so
There's a lot of support for this.
56 people have said, yeah, well, I don't mind having some solar panels out in a field as long as I can get some of the action.
And that's exactly what's happening.
Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the day,
I think you're right.
and we should be prepared to say good night, good day, good morning,
Something like
good
that.
week. So we'll say goodbye.
Goodbye, people.